had no idea that night would change everything, or that the man I'd loved quietly for years would finally touch me. If you had told me earlier that a simple weekend camping trip with my straight best friend would flip my entire world upside down, I would have laughed, shaken my head, and blamed your imagination. John wasn't the type of man you let yourself hope for, not when you were me, not when he was 30, built like someone carved him out of summer heat, and absolutely sure of who he was, or at least, that's what I always believed. I kept my feelings buried, deep enough that even I pretended they weren't there. It was safer like that. Friends don't ruin things. Don't risk years of quiet love for a chance that doesn't exist, especially not when the other man has only ever shown interest in women, talked about them, dated them, kissed them. There was never space in his world for someone like me. But that night, that cold, quiet night, beneath a sky full of stars, I felt something shift. Not in a dramatic way, not like a confession or a deliberate touch, more like a tremor, soft, invisible, but real. The tent fabric trembled around us, whispering against the wind, carrying secrets it wasn't ready to release. I remember lying there beside him, listening to his breathing, steady, warm, too close. I told myself I was imagining things, that nothing was happening, and nothing would happen. And maybe I could have believed that, if I hadn't felt the way the air thickened, if I hadn't felt his body shift closer, if I hadn't sensed something unspoken hovering between us, if I had known what his hands would do to me that night, I might have never agreed to go camping at all. I've always been good at keeping quiet, things quiet, feelings, thoughts, the kinds of secrets that live in your chest and ache when you breathe too deeply. Maybe that's why no one ever suspected the truth about me and John, or rather, the truth about me and my feelings for him. I was 24 when this happened, old enough to know better, young enough to still believe that maybe, someday, impossible things could happen if I wished quietly enough. I wasn't bold, not like him. I wasn't the kind of guy who walked into a room and stole the air with his presence. I was the observer. The one who paid attention to details no one else noticed. The way someone's jaw tightened when they were annoyed. The way their eyes softened when they were tired. The way John's hands looked when he laughed, wide, warm, veins visible beneath sun-browned skin. We met at the gym 2 years earlier. I'd been the new guy, awkward in trying to learn how to use the machines without looking like a total beginner. John was the one who walked over, corrected my grip, and said, "Hey, don't break your wrist trying to look cool." I'd flushed bright red, and he'd just grinned as if he knew exactly what he was doing. From there, things just happened. A shared workout became 2, then 3, then weekly. Then somehow we were grabbing coffee afterward, then texting, then sharing playlists, then confiding in each other on late nights when neither of us could sleep. I didn't realize when friendship turned into something more, for me at least. It just grew silently, like vines in the dark, wrapping around parts of me I didn't know were vulnerable. John, on the other hand, was the definition of casual confidence. He had that straight guy energy that everyone recognized instantly, broad shoulders, easy laugh, the kind of charm that didn't try to impress but still did. Women loved him. Men respected him. He moved through the world certain of who he was, and I admired that certainty more than I could admit. But even someone like him wasn't invincible. A month before the camping trip, he'd gone through a rough breakup, a 3-year relationship that ended abruptly, leaving him hollowed out in a way he didn't show many people. Work wasn't helping either. He was dealing with unreasonable pressure, long hours, and the kind of loneliness that creeps in when life goes quiet. One afternoon, after we finished lifting, he tossed a water bottle at me and said, "You want to get out of the city this weekend? Maybe go camping. I need a break from everything." My heart did something stupid, something hopeful, but all I said was, "Yeah, sure, sounds fun." The day of the trip, he picked me up in his old truck. The interior smelled like pine and that cologne he always used, the one that made my pulse skip when I got too close. I tossed my backpack in the back seat, slid in beside him, and tried not to stare at how good he looked in a simple black t-shirt. "Ready to escape civilization?" he asked, flashing that crooked grin. "More than you know," I replied, buckling in. The drive started with our usual banter, him teasing me about my terrible music choices, me rolling my eyes and telling him his playlist was just angry Jim Bro sounds. But after the jokes faded, there were moments of quiet, not uncomfortable, just charged. I kept stealing glances at him, at the way his forearm rested on the steering wheel, muscles shifting with every turn, the way sunlight poured through the window and cut along his jawline, the way his deep voice vibrated in my chest when he talked about work, his ex, his exhaustion. "Honestly," he said at one point, eyes on the road, "I just needed someone who makes things feel lighter." I swallowed hard. "I'm glad you asked me." Then he looked at me for a second, really looked. "Yeah," he murmured. "Me too." I turned my face toward the window after that, pretending to admire the passing trees. Really, I was trying to get my heartbeat under control as we left the city behind and the roads narrowed into stretches of forest. Something like anticipation settled between us, the kind that hummed under your skin, fragile and electric all at once. I told myself it was just a trip, just a weekend, just a friend needing space, but deep down, I already felt that quiet shift, the one I pretended wasn't happening. And if I'd been paying attention, I might have noticed how often his eyes flicked toward me when he thought I wasn't looking, as though I wasn't the only one struggling to keep something unspoken buried. The campsite was tucked deep into the woods, far enough from the main trail that the sounds of the world faded until there was nothing left but the rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds settling in for the night. The air felt different out there, cleaner, colder, almost sharp against my lungs. Pine needles cushioned the ground, and the forest smelled like damp earth and something untouched, something ancient. It was the kind of place where everything you carried with you, stress, worry, longing, seemed to loosen its grip without asking permission. John parked the truck beneath a towering cedar and stretched when he stepped out. His shirt rose just a little, exposing a sliver of skin above his waistband, and I looked away too quickly before the moment could mean something. Before I could make it mean something, "Help me grab the tent," he asked, heading toward the back. "Yeah, sure." We unloaded everything: sleeping bags, cooler, cooking gear, and laid out the tent pieces across a smooth patch of ground. John knelt down first, sorting the poles with a kind of confident ease that I envied. I crouched beside him, trying to follow his instructions. "Here," he said, reaching for my hand. "You're holding it backwards." I froze when his fingers wrapped around mine, warm and calloused. He adjusted the angle of the pole, guiding my grip. It was nothing, just a practical touch, but my chest tightened all the same. "You good?" he asked, too close, his breath brushing my cheek. "Yeah," I said quickly, "just thinking." He smirked, and for a moment, I forgot what I was supposed to be doing at all. We finished setting up the tent together, our shoulders brushing more than they needed to, our movements syncing the way they always did when we worked side by side. When we stepped back to admire it, John grinned proudly. "Not bad for two amateurs," he said. "You're the expert," I replied. "I just didn't want to stab myself." He laughed, one of those deep, unguarded laughs that made the world feel a little wider as the sun sank behind the trees. We gathered firewood and built a small fire. The flames crackled to life, casting a warm glow that flickered over his face. Shadows danced across his jawline, highlighting the faint tiredness in his eyes, the kind of exhaustion you couldn't hide with jokes. He handed me a metal cup filled with something strong and smoky. I took a sip, wincing a little. "You'll live," he said, bumping his shoulder against mine as he sat beside me on a fallen log. We drank slowly, letting the fire warm our hands. The sky above us opened into a breathtaking scatter of stars, thousands of them, shimmering like frost on black velvet. I tilted my head back, feeling small and strangely safe. "It's crazy out here," I whispered. "Yeah," he murmured. "It feels, I don't know, honest." I looked at him, but he kept staring at the fire, as if the flames held the words he didn't know how to say. After another drink, he loosened up in a way I hadn't seen in months. He talked about work stress, how burned out he felt, how the breakup had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. His voice was low, quiet, almost fragile. "I don't tell people this stuff," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't like feeling exposed." "You're not exposed," I said gently. "You're just human." He glanced over at me then, and something deep flickered in his eyes. Something soft, something searching. That look held just a second too long. I felt it. In my chest, in my stomach, everywhere. A current passing between us, subtle but unmistakable. He cleared his throat and looked away, tossing another log into the fire. "You ever wonder," he said slowly, "how different life would be if you could just be honest with someone?" The question hung between us, heavy and strangely intimate. I frowned softly. "Honest how?" He didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he took another sip from his cup, eyes locked on the flames. His jaw tight with thoughts he wasn't sharing. "I mean," he said eventually, "honest about what you really want, even if it scares you." A soft breeze moved through the trees, rustling the tent fabric behind us. A low whispering sound. I shivered not from the cold. "I'm not sure I get it," I said. He looked at me again, and this time, his gaze felt like a touch. "You will," he murmured, almost to himself. But I didn't understand then. Not really. Not until later that night, when the tent walls would tremble from more than just the wind. Night settled over the forest in slow layers, each minute dimming the world a little more until the fire became the only source of warmth and light. The trees around us faded into silhouette stark pillars, guarding the edges of our little clearing. The smoke drifted upward in lazy spirals, carrying the scent of pine and charred wood. It wrapped around us in a way that made the world feel smaller, closer, more intimate. John cooked dinner over the fire, simple stuff, just beans and sausages, but he acted like he was preparing a feast. He nudged my elbow every few minutes, cracking jokes, teasing me every time I tried to take over. "You're going to burn this," I warned, pointing at the pan. "You doubt my skills," he said, eyebrows raised. "Always." He bumped my shoulder, grinning. "You'll eat it anyway." And I did, even burned. It tasted good, maybe because it was him. Maybe because we were alone in the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. After we ate, he leaned back on his hands, legs stretched out toward the fire. I mirrored him, sitting close enough that the sides of our knees brushed lightly. He didn't move away. He didn't even seem to notice, or maybe he did, and that was the part that made my stomach twist. "You know," he said after a while, staring at the flames, "I'm glad you came." I glanced at him. "Why?" "I mean, you have other friends. You could have invited anyone." "Yeah," he said softly, "but I didn't want anyone else." The words hit me harder than the drink earlier. They slipped out of him without hesitation, like he wasn't aware of how they landed, or like he was, and was pretending he wasn't. He looked at me then, really looked. The firelight flickered over his features, catching in his eyes and softening everything about him. I'd always known he was handsome, but never like this, never with his guard half lowered, never with something vulnerable shimmering under the surface. "You're easy to be around," he said, voice low. "It's like I can breathe when you're here." I felt heat creep up my neck. I forced a laugh. "Well, I'm glad my oxygen-giving skills are appreciated." He smirked. "Shut up." But he didn't look away. Not for a long moment. And there was nothing joking in his eyes. When the fire finally dimmed and the cold sharpened around us, we decided to head inside the tent. The space was smaller than I remembered, so small, our shoulders brushed even while sitting. The fabric rustled softly as John zipped the flap shut, sealing us into a cocoon of darkness and warmth. I didn't realize it'd be this tight inside, I said, trying to sound casual. You scared of being too close to me? He teased. I swallowed. No, he chuckled, but it faded quickly, replaced by a quieter kind of hush. Our sleeping bags were laid out side by side, barely separated. When we crawled into them, the rustling made everything feel louder than it should have. I lay on my back, staring at the faint shadows on the tent ceiling. John lay on his side facing me, his arm folded under his head. I felt the heat of him soft, steady, unavoidable. You cold? He asked. A little. He shifted closer. Better? My heart slammed against my ribs. He was close enough now that I felt his breath on my cheek, warm, slow. I could smell his shampoo, that faint woodsy scent he always carried. Better, I whispered. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was heavy, full of things neither of us knew how to say. I became painfully aware of every tiny movement he made, the shift of his hand near his chest, the tightening of his fingers, the soft exhale that brushed my neck. He was inches from my face, and every instinct in me screamed to pull back, to protect myself. But I didn't want to move. Not tonight, so, he said, into the dark, voice deep and quiet. You ever think about stuff you shouldn't? The question startled me. Like what? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rolled onto his back, the side of his arm pressing against mine through our sleeping bags. The sudden contact was enough to send a warm shiver across my skin. I just wondered, he finally said, if you ever wanted something you thought you couldn't have. There it was again. That strange edge in his voice, the one I'd been hearing all day, but had been too scared to name. I guess everyone does, I answered carefully. Sometimes, he hummed, a low, thoughtful sound. Yeah, sometimes. I shifted slightly, overwhelming myself with the awareness of how near his body was. The tent felt too warm, too small, too full of breath and unspoken things. When I turned a little to get comfortable, my arm brushed his skin. Sorry, I whispered. No, you're fine, he murmured quickly, but he didn't move away. Instead, he let his fingers drift over my forearm, in a way that was far too deliberate to be an accident. I held my breath. He kept tracing slow lines up and down, pretending like he wasn't doing anything at all. The motion was gentle and dizzying, sending a pulse of heat through me. I tried to roll onto my side more out of panic than discomfort, but his hand closed around my wrist. Don't, he whispered. My throat tightened. John, what are you doing? I don't know, he said, except he sounded like he did know. Like he knew exactly what he was doing, and was terrified to admit it. The air between us thickened. I could hear his heartbeat steady, louder than the quiet forest around us. Our breath mingled, warm and uneven. He shifted again, closing the last few inches. Our sleeping bags touched, our bodies pressed lightly through the fabric. His knee brushed mine. The tent seemed to shrink, the walls leaning in, listening. Marcus, he breathed, like my name itself was a confession. I closed my eyes. Yeah. For a moment, everything went still, absolutely still. Then I felt it. His hand sliding slowly across the space between us, moving over my waist with a tenderness that stole the breath from my lungs. And just like that, sleep became the last thing in the world either of us were thinking about. I felt the weight of his hand first warm, steady, impossible to mistake. My breath caught somewhere between my throat and my chest. Everything inside the tent went still. Even the wind seemed to pause outside, as if the trees themselves were leaning closer to listen. Marcus, John whispered. His voice wasn't playful or teasing. It was shaky, uncertain, a tone I had never heard from him in all the years I'd known him. It was the kind of whisper someone uses when they're afraid of breaking whatever fragile, thing is holding their courage together. My whole body went tense. My mind spun. This couldn't be happening. Not him. Not my straight best friend. Not the man I had been trying not to love. John, I breathed, trying to steady myself. You're drunk? You don't know what I'm not, he whispered firmly, cutting me off. I swear, I'm not drunk. He was too close, too real. I could feel his breath on my cheek, warm and uneven. I could smell smoke from the fire in his hair. He shifted again, his hand sliding from my waist to rest over my ribs. The touch was careful, almost reverent-like. He was afraid I'd break. I need you to look at me, he whispered. I turned my head slowly, terrified of what I'd see. His eyes were open, staring at me in the faint glow of the tent light. And what was in them? Fear, longing, something that looked dangerously like want, hit me harder than anything he could have said out loud. Why are you looking at me like that? I whispered. Because I've been trying not to, he said, voice tight. For months. My heart stumbled. What are you talking about? My voice cracked on the words. He swallowed, his Adam's apple dipping slowly in the dim light. I've been confused, he admitted. I thought it was nothing. I thought it was just admiration or something. I kept telling myself that. But then I kept noticing you differently, thinking about you, wondering if I was imagining things. I shook my head. John, no, listen, he insisted softly. Please. His fingers curled a little tighter against my side, anchoring me to him. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing the tent walls in gentle, trembling waves. The fabric shook faintly, like it knew something inside was shifting. I didn't know how to deal with it, he whispered. I've only ever been with women. I didn't think this was something I could feel. A tremor went through him, and I froze, because he wasn't speaking casually. He wasn't experimenting. He wasn't curious. He was confessing. This isn't just tonight, he said. This isn't just because I'm lonely or sad or drunk. I swear to you, Marcus, I've been thinking about this for months. I felt dizzy, like the floor beneath me had disappeared. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to mess us up. He continued, voice breaking a little. I didn't want you to feel pressured. I didn't even know if it was real. But being here with you, just us, away from everything, I can't keep pretending. His thumb brushed gently against my skin through the fabric, just once. Soft, intentional. Tell me I'm wrong, he whispered. Tell me you don't feel anything for me, and I'll stop. I'll move away. I'll pretend this never happened. My lips parted, but no words came out, because I did feel something. I'd felt it for years. I'd just buried it so deep I forgot what it felt like to let it breathe. John, I said softly, I do feel something, but I don't understand what you're trying to say. He let out a shaky breath, as if relieved I hadn't pulled away. I'm saying, he murmured, moving just a little closer, that I want you. My heart nearly stopped. Not lust, not impulse, not confusion. Want? You don't know what you're saying, I whispered. His hand slid slowly up my side, stopping at the edge of my shoulder. I know exactly what I'm saying. His forehead brushed mine, just lightly, barely a touch. But it was enough to steal every bit of air from my lungs. Marcus, he breathed. I need you to tell me if this is okay. Consent, unmistakable woven into every syllable. I swallowed hard, emotions tightening inside me like a fist. Are you sure? I whispered. Because if you wake up tomorrow and regret this, I won't, he said instantly. I swear to you. I've been holding this in too long. My chest tightened. How long? He hesitated, embarrassed. A while. How long, John? He exhaled, defeated. Since last winter, maybe. Maybe before that. Maybe since the first night we stayed up on the phone until sunrise, and I didn't want to hang up. My breath left me in a soft rush. He shifted closer again, his nose brushing mine, the space between us growing painfully small. "You're not alone in this," he whispered. "Not anymore. But I need to know if I'm crossing a line." "You're not?" I said. It came out cracked, but honest. "You're not crossing anything." His hand moved from my shoulder to cup the side of my neck, slow, gentle, careful. "You like me," he whispered, as if confirming something he'd been terrified to believe. I didn't look away. "I've liked you for years." He inhaled sharply, like the confession hit him in the center of his chest. Then he leaned in, not fast, not greedy, not desperate, just close enough that his lips brushed mine in the faintest, trembling ghost of a touch, soft, slow, breathless. "Is this okay?" he murmured against my mouth. "Yes," I breathed. The tent walls trembled again from the wind, the fabric whispering around us as if the night itself was holding its breath. He kissed me properly, this time slow and uncertain, like he was learning what it meant as he went. His hand slid behind my back, drawing me closer until our bodies pressed gently together. Heat meeting heat. I felt the tremor in him, and he felt the one in me. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes in the dimness. "I didn't think I could want another man," he whispered, "but I do. I want you, and it scares the hell out of me." I reached up, touching his cheek with a trembling hand. "It scares me too," I admitted, "but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." His eyes softened, and he leaned into my touch like he'd been waiting for it. He kissed me again, longer, deeper, the kind of kiss that said everything he couldn't put into words. His other hand slid to my waist, holding me carefully, as if I might break if he pushed too far. Every movement was deliberate. Every touch was a question he let me answer with my breath, my hands, the way I pressed back into him. Outside, the wind whispered against the tent. Inside, the world shifted. Two lives, two quiet longings, finally collided. He rested his forehead against mine, breathing hard, his voice barely a whisper. "This feels right," he murmured. "Tell me you feel it too." "I do," I whispered back. "I feel all of it." And in the darkness, beneath the trembling fabric of the tent walls, something finally broke open inside both of us, something that had been waiting, buried, terrified, but unbearably real. John exhaled shakily, pulling me closer, and I let him. For the first time in years, everything made sense. I woke to the soft rustle of the tent zipper and a sudden rush of cold air. For a second I thought it was still night, that everything that happened between us was still happening, but then my eyes opened to a hazy morning light, and the space beside me was empty. John was gone. My stomach twisted. The sleeping bag beside mine was unzipped and abandoned, still holding the shape of his body. The scent of him still clung to the airwood smoke, warmth, and the faint memories of his hands on me, his breath against my throat. For a few seconds, I lay completely still, trying to convince myself I wasn't feeling what I was feeling. Panic. What if he regretted it? What if he hated himself? What if he hated me? My chest tightened. The quiet outside the tent felt like judgment birds chirping with careless ease, the breeze carrying the smell of damp earth. The fire pit still smoldering faintly from last night. Everything felt too normal compared to the chaos spiraling inside me. I swallowed hard and finally forced myself to sit up. My legs felt weak. My throat was dry. The memories from the night came rushing back all at once, his voice whispering my name, his confession, the way he held me like he didn't want to let go, and now he was gone. I pushed out of the tent, bracing myself like I expected to find him already packing up, ready to pretend none of it happened. Instead, I saw him standing a few feet away, with his back to me, hands on his hips, staring into the woods like he was wrestling with something too big for words. He didn't turn when he heard me step out. He didn't even move. That hurt more than anything. I hugged my arms around myself. "Hey," I finally said, voice small. He stiffened, then he turned. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept at all. His hair was a mess. His jaw was tight enough to crack. For the briefest moment, there was something in his maybe, but as soon as I noticed it, he looked away. "Hey," he said quietly. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. This was it. He regretted it. He didn't know what to say. He wished last night had never happened. "You were gone when I woke up," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, needed some air?" That was a knife straight through me. "Oh." I nodded slowly, forcing a small smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Makes sense?" He didn't say anything back. He didn't reach for me. He didn't come closer. That was enough to break me. "I'll pack my stuff," I said quietly. "You don't have to worry. I'll figure out a ride home or something." "What?" He snapped his head toward me, startled. "Marcus, no. That's not. It's fine," I said, stepping back. "Really, I get it." "Get what?" "That it was a mistake," I whispered. "You don't have to pretend for my sake." His face fell. Hard. "Marcus, that's not what this is." He took a step toward me, then stopped, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed. "Just give me a second to think." "Think about what?" My voice cracked. "Whether last night was a freak. Whether touching me made you feel sick this morning." The moment I said it, guilt punched me in the chest. I hadn't meant it. I was scared and defensive and spiraling. John's expression shattered. "No," he said, almost breathless. "God, no. That's not what I'm thinking." "Then what?" My hands trembled, because right now it feels like you're standing 5 feet away, trying to erase what happened. He exhaled shakily and raked a hand through his hair. "I'm scared, Marcus." That stopped me. Scared. John wasn't scared of anything. Not storms, not people, not life. Certainly not himself. "What are you scared of?" I asked softly. His eyes lifted to mine, and for the first time since sunrise, he didn't look away. "You?" he whispered. "I'm scared of you." My breath caught. He stepped closer, slowly this time. Like approaching a wild animal, he didn't want to spook. "I wasn't afraid of what we did," he continued. "Not even for a second." His voice cracked on the next words. "I was afraid of how much I wanted it." I froze. He kept going. I woke up and everything felt too real, too intense. I didn't know how to face it. I didn't know how to face you after wanting you like that. My heartbeat quickened, and I thought, if I looked at you, he said quietly, you'd see everything. Everything I've been holding back. Everything I don't know how to name yet. He reached me then, stopping just inches away. "Marcus," he whispered, "I didn't walk away because I regret anything. I walked away because I've never wanted something so much that it scared me." A soft sound escaped my throat, half shock, half relief. Without thinking, I reached up and touched his arm. He inhaled sharply, but didn't pull back. "I thought you hated me this morning," I admitted, voice trembling. "I could never hate you." He shook his head. "I care about you. Too much, maybe." The world tilted under me. "Then why didn't you say something?" I whispered. "Because I didn't know how," he said. "I don't have the right words. I don't even fully understand what I'm feeling yet. But when I touched you last night, that was the most honest I've been in years." My chest tightened in the best way possible. He took my hand slowly, gently, like it was something fragile he didn't want to break. "I don't want to lose you," he said. "Not because I panicked for 5 stupid minutes this morning." I squeezed his hand back, relief washing over me so strong it almost hurt. "You won't lose me," I said. "Just talk to me. That's all I need." His shoulders relaxed, and a small, relieved smile touched his lips. "I can do that," he whispered, and for the first time since waking up, I believed him. We didn't rush back into the tent or try to recreate anything from the night before. Instead, we just stood there for a moment, our hands gently linked. the morning quiet settling around us like something sacred. The fear between us had cracked open, and in its place was something simpler: breath, warmth, possibility. Eventually, John let out a shaky exhale and nudged my shoulder lightly. "Come on," he murmured, softer than I'd ever heard him. "Let's pack up before the ranger thinks we died out here." His voice had a smile in it, a real one. We moved around the campsite together, and everything felt lighter. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It felt warm, full of things we'd both said, and things we still didn't have words for yet. Every now and then, our arms brushed. Every time it happened, neither of us pulled away. John folded up the tent while I rolled the sleeping bags. When I handed his back to him, our fingers touched longer than necessary. He didn't let go immediately. Neither did I. At one point he stepped behind me to grab the lantern, and his hand rested briefly on my lower back, steady, casual, but deliberate. It sent a soft, dizzying warmth through my chest. We walked toward the trail that led back to the car, backpacks slung over our shoulders, leaves crunching beneath our boots. For a while we just walked in silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Then John reached out and took my hand. Not accidentally, not hesitantly, just took it. His fingers slid between mine like it was the most natural thing in the world, like we'd been doing it for years instead of minutes. I glanced at him, half expecting him to look away, but he didn't. He held my gaze as a shy, almost boyish smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You okay with this?" he asked quietly. I nodded, my chest opening with something warm and enormous. "Yeah, more than okay." He squeezed my hand once firm, reassuring, and we walked the rest of the way like that. By the time we reached the car, the sun was climbing higher, lighting the trees in soft gold. John dropped his bag into the trunk and leaned against the bumper, watching me with that same thoughtful, uncertain, hopeful look I'd only seen glimpses of before. "Marcus," he said, his voice low. I stepped closer. "Yeah," he swallowed, his eyes flicking briefly toward the ground before meeting mine again. "Last night wasn't some one-time thing to me, and it wasn't confusion. I need you to know that." My heart thudded so hard it felt like it might crack open. "I believe you," I whispered. He nodded, taking a breath like he needed courage. "I don't have everything figured out yet. I'm still learning myself, I guess. But I want this. I want to try with you." His expression softened, slowly, if that's what you need, carefully, honestly. A laugh slipped out of me, small, disbelieving, relieved. "John, that's all I've ever wanted." He stepped closer until his shoes brushed mine. "Good," he murmured, "because I don't want last night to be the only night you let me hold you." My breath caught. I didn't trust myself to speak, so instead I reached up and brushed a thumb across his cheek. He closed his eyes for a second, leaning into the touch like he'd been waiting for it. Then he kissed my forehead soft, warm, lingering just long enough to make my knees feel unsteady. It wasn't the wild intensity of the night before. It was gentler, a promise instead of a confession. We got into the car and settled into the familiar silence of the drive, but the atmosphere wasn't the same. Nothing was the same. My entire body hummed with a quiet, steady thrill, the kind you only feel when you've been waiting years for something you never thought you'd get. A few minutes into the drive, John rested his hand on my thigh, not teasing, not by accident, just a simple, warm claim that said, "I'm here. I'm choosing this." I looked over at him. His eyes stayed on the road, but a small smile pulled at his lips, like he knew exactly what he was doing to me. Double quotes, "Hey Marcus," he said softly. "Yeah, last night. I don't want to hide that from myself anymore. And I don't want to hide from you." My throat tightened. "You don't have to." He nodded once, firm. "Good, because I think this might be the first thing in a long time that actually feels right." I covered his hand with mine, feeling the steady weight of his palm on my leg. feeling something settle into place inside me that had been unsteady for far too long. As the trees blurred past the windows and the morning sun spilled across the dashboard, one thought came to me, quiet but certain. Maybe the tent wasn't the only thing that hurt us. Maybe the world finally hurt us too.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Your feedback is very valuable and will help us improve. May I kindly ask which country you are joining us from?